Hey Internet travelers, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet and on over 140 radio stations in the US and around the world via satellite radio on the Liberty Radio Network. I have a great guest coming on, a person I've known for a number of years, Mark Jeftovic, and he runs EasyDNS, which you can find at easydns.com. He's actually been doing for our organization, the Dollar Vigilante, our DNS, and it's a really important issue that a lot of people don't really realize how quickly the government can turn off your website if they don't like you, and of course they don't like us. And Mark also works with Zero Hedge, a very popular blog, and apparently they have a lot of issues where they're always being tried to shut down. I've had our sites attacked so many times, and Mark's a bit of an expert in this area, so we're going to get into a lot about technology and how us people who are out there fighting the power, speaking truth to power, how we can continue to speak truth to power without getting shut off the internet. And there's a lot of very basic things you can do that can make a big difference, as I've found out over the years, that Mark will tell us all about. He's also from Toronto. He lives in Canada, and he's also just agreed to run for the Libertarian Party of Canada. So it's another Anarchast guest that's doing that. We'll talk a little bit about that, not too much because we've been talking a lot about that lately, and I want to focus on other things a little bit. And he's also been doing many other things. He's doing lots of stuff, and he's written for us many articles, as I mentioned, like, is your domain name safe from nefarious interests? So lots of interesting stuff we're going to talk about. But of course, Mark, the first thing I have to do is make sure that you're morally sound and consistent, and ask you, how did you become an anarchist?
Yeah, it was kind of a gradual process. I think I became more of an anarcho-capitalist before I realized that there was a term for it. I remember at a very young age thinking, and I thought it was universal. I thought, well, I have my own moral code. I have my own ethical compass that doesn't require a government standing behind my back to force me to be a moral or ethical person. So I don't not kill my neighbor because there's a law prohibiting me from killing my neighbor. It's just not the kind of person I am. And I thought, left to themselves, most people are probably like that. It's a live and let live kind of philosophy. As I got older, I think I started coming toward it from the economic side. When I started looking into the nature of finance and the nature of global markets and things, I became very enamored with Austrian economics and the Austrian school economics. And the more I looked at that, the more I realized, or came to believe anyway, that laissez-faire was the way to let an economy run, and free markets left to themselves really do iron things out in the long run. So from that, I picked up a couple of instrumental books that helped refine my thinking some more. The Sovereign Individual was a big one, which just really made me embrace the idea of personal responsibility, and if there is going to be sovereignties out there, competitive sovereignty. And then a couple of Peter Murphy books really drove the idea home for me that a lot of things that that people think you can't do without government can actually be done without government. And
yeah, so was that sort of a process that happened recently or throughout your life that you sort of figured out that you were an anarcho-capitalist?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a recent thing. I've probably been this way for at least a decade, but it's been, perhaps more recently that I've been a bit more vocal about it, something that I could talk about in front of the neighbors, that sort of thing.
That's great. And I guess let's just talk quickly about the Libertarian Party thing, since it ties in. So sure. You're going to get involved in that. Tell us how you feel about being an anarcho-capitalist running for the Libertarian Party of Canada. Well,
some people may say it's a bit of an oxymoron, an anarchist running for political party. I have a little almost euphemism I told you via email. I think anarchy is an ideology for me, and then pragmatically minarchy, and then realistically libertarianism. And so these are all sort of gradations along a path to an ideal, and we all know that ideals rarely see the light of day, but if you can sort of work toward them, I think libertarian is sort of a real world step toward that kind of societal model.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's rising. Let's get right into all the sort of tech stuff, because I find this really interesting, because I've been a victim of so much tech problems ever since I started my first internet company in 1994. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is about DNS, and you run EasyDNS. Tell us a little bit about EasyDNS, and also tell us about how some of the mistakes that some people are making by having their DNS hosted by places like GoDaddy.
Sure. I mean, we started EasyDNS in 1998. We've been doing it ever since. We're at about 300,000 domains under management. We have customers in over 100 countries. What I found interesting about the entire DNS space in the late 90s and the early 2000s, it occurred to me, it was more of a question. Why are all the nutcases attracted to domain policy? Because we'd be on these domain policy discussion lists and have a lot of real vehemently idealistic people in there pounding the table about all kinds of things, censorship and top-down control and that sort of thing. And then as I got more immersed in this industry, I realized that it's happening for a reason, because in the world we're going into, where everything is increasingly wired and networked, and intercommunications networks are basically the dial tone of the world, in effect. And DNS is the secret sauce that makes it all work. So all of the current and future battles over control, over choke points, over freedom of speech, what's permitted, what's not permitted, it's all going to take place in the DNS sphere. And so that's why it attracted people in the early days who could sort of see over the horizon a bit more than I could, until I got into it and saw, yeah, this is actually the where the battlefield is going to be in the future.
Yeah, you can see it all happening right now. The UN is trying to take over control of the internet, which actually I don't understand exactly what they're trying to do. Do you understand exactly what they're trying to do? I know they want to control it, but how are they trying to go about it?
That's a process that I think might be a bit more sensationalized than it really is. It's an internet governance issue. Right now, the internet is governed by a not-for-profit corporation called ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They're based out of California. They're an American corporation, and the internet steering and governance and the numbering, the technical underpinnings of it, is run by an entity called the NTIIA, which has been doing it for years. And the idea is to basically transition that so it's not under one sovereign nation, but, you know, a truly global stakeholder group. You know, of all of this stuff in this area of policy, I actually have not a lot of, like, that doesn't concern me too much, what happens there, because there are other issues that in my mind are a lot more pressing and a lot more closer. And so it's going to be such a drawn out process that it's going to take years to play out.
Yeah, I'm sort of similar to you. I haven't paid too much attention, because to me, the internet can't really be totally controlled by anyone. That's sort of the point of the internet. They're trying, of course, and they're going to try through all sorts of legislation and putting people in cages. That's what government does, whether it's the US government or the UN, which is, they're trying to make the one world government. I don't think they really can, but I do pay attention to it, of course, because it is interesting to see that they definitely do want to take control of it, but they don't really know how. And I think, as you pointed out, there's so many basic things that people are already doing wrong that they could so easily fix. For example, me personally, with all my businesses, I always work with anarcho-capitalists on whatever I'm doing, anything important, right? So if I want to start up an offshore company or something, I would never go to a statist, because I just don't trust them. They're not morally sound people. Same with our DNS. We do it through you because you're an anarcho-capitalist. We host most of our servers in Iceland at a web server host who I believe is an anarcho-capitalist. I should have him on Anarchast. And he has right on his page, he says he believes in total free speech and he will not back down to any government who says he has to turn off a website. And he also says he also accepts Bitcoin, so another good sign. And you do similar things at EasyDNS. Why don't you tell people the risks they run by just keeping a DNS at a place like GoDaddy?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to approach it. For one thing, and it does tie it back a little bit to what we were talking about before with the transition of the internet route from an American-based entity to a multinational one, because you have a lot of complicated issues around jurisdiction when it comes to law. What's legal where you're sitting might not be legal where I'm sitting, and then there's another, police officer sitting in another country that neither of us are in saying, we both should go to jail. And when it comes to a website, whose jurisdiction has authority? So the problem with .com or being with a US-based registrar is usually US law can be asserted. And so you would be subject to whatever gets decided in the United States in terms of what's going to happen. So there's been cases where a website run by non-US people with activities completely outside of the US have been taken down because of a legal action or an indictment in the US. If you're under .com, .com's run by Verisign. Verisign's a US company, so somebody can just Verisign has to comply with U.S. law, so you can go to Verisign, and even if your registrar is saying, I need something better before I'll take your site down, they can still cut your knees out from underneath you by going to Verisign and take you straight out at the .com level. So,
is that the same for the other ones like .org and .net and things like that?
Well, .net run by Verisign. .org, run by Public Interest Registry, all US-based. .info is run by Affilius, who is kind of run out of the States, but I believe they're headquartered in Ireland. So, up here in Canada, it's .ca, so it's the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. And then the other thing I was going to say about it is some registrars are easier to convince to take down a given domain name than others, and without naming names, you kind of know who they are.
No, go ahead, because I want people to know about EasyDNS, because you're one who's come out. Same with the a server company in Iceland. They're called Orange Servers,
right.
I believe. They're very outspoken that they will defend people's right to say whatever they want, and they won't just back down immediately when they get a government person show up and say, shut this site down, and you're one of them as well. So I really recommend, I don't know of any others like that, so don't feel shy to promote yourself, because I want anarcho-capitalists and anarchists to know about these options.
Sure, okay. I mean, we've had our share of dust-ups with everything from the Food and Drug Administration in the US to the City of London, England, has an intellectual property crime unit, which has tried to take down a lot of domains just by sending email notices of criminality. This domain is criminal, you've got to take it down. We've had ongoing skirmishes with them, and even right down to private citizens. We were sued in a defamation case here in Canada because a guy felt that one of our customers was defaming him on his website, and we said we're not taking it down until we have a court direction to do so. And he sued the customer and he sued us. And ironically, the customer's a raving communist, and we had to spend a lot of money. They both are. We spend a lot of money to...
I'm not surprised. So one guy was defaming somebody, and the other guy wanted to just have government force take down everything, and they're both communists, and you're the only decent person caught in the middle, and you're actually spending money to defend both of them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it's like, he's a communist, but he has a right to, say it. So, and we'll fight tooth and nail to give him, that he can keep his right to say it. So
that's great. No, that's what I. Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're all about, right? And that's why I want people to know about EasyDNS. So if you have your DNS, if you're an anarchist, or you have your blog or your website, people like Nick Burnaby of Antimedia, the Antimedia, who I just had on Anarchast, he's got a big site. People like that, if they probably don't even know about these things, and they probably won't know until they get shut down one day, and then they'll be scrambling. So I want to help them to realize some of these basic things. Just to host your DNS somewhere else with someone like EasyDNS. So he's an anarcho-capitalist, and he's already defended communists, so he'll definitely defend anarcho-capitalist.
Yeah. I mean, if someone ever came for your site or Zero Hedge, we would batten down the hatches. It would be like civil disobedience before we let them take you down. So.
I appreciate that, and so definitely, if you just even if you have a small blog, if I don't know what it costs really, or what's involved with changing your DNS over, because I didn't do it myself. I had Michael, who my person who works with me, do it. I don't know what the process is. Yeah, I mean, if you're just moving your domain registrar to us, there's so many different permutations. We can be your registrar, we can be your DNS provider, or your registrar. We can be both. So if you just move your registrar over to us, it's like a complicated renewal. You have to jump through a few hoops just to make sure that the transfer is authorized. And then when it's done, it's like you haven't lost any time at your old registrar. It just adds another year of time onto however much time you had left. So even if your domain expires in 2016 sometime and you do a transfer over to us, when it's all over, your domain expires in 2017. We also do web hosting and managed WordPress hosting for those who want it. We have email as well. All of our servers are not in the US, mostly in Canada. Canada is one of the Five Eyes, but we do have some extra tools that we like to make available to our customers. We have an experimental beta service that you might find interesting. It's automatically PGP encrypting your mail that you're forwarding. Because email forwarding is a really popular application. Let's say you're with Rogers or Bell or Hotmail, and you're just forwarding through yourdomain.com to your ISP or even your employer's mailbox. We've got a system where you can put your PGP key in the settings, and as it comes through our forwarders, we encrypt it and deposit it there in the remote destination. Now, it's not an end-to-end encryption product, but it will help you out in cases where somebody goes into that facility and they want to look at what's there. They can't look at your stuff because it's already encrypted. That's great. Yeah, I like a lot of that stuff, and making that easier. I found that the whole PGP thing it still isn't all that easy, and this is about 20 years plus into PGP, which is pretty good privacy, but it's not pretty easy privacy. Is it not possible to make some sort of really easy email thing that anyone can use and they don't even know they're using it? They don't have to set anything up. Is that not possible? Well, there's another Canadian company called Hushmail that I always thought did a pretty good job of making PGP encrypted mail accessible to the average user. There's a guy you should get on the show sometime as well. I'm aware of Hushmail. I think I remember something about they had something happen to them or something. Do you remember anything about this? Like someone questioned whether they were really secure or not? Oh, I haven't heard of that. Or it might have been another one. There's a few. It might not have been Hushmail. There was down in the States, and they had to shut down. Yeah, there's been a few that have had problems, so I might be wrong on it being Hushmail. Okay. Yeah, and there's a few others coming out now, too. There's one in Switzerland or something. So, yeah, these are all things that we should be looking into, especially with the NSA as it is today. But just in general, just to keep yourself safe out there with all these governments running rampant around the world. Yeah, I mean, I think personally, well, not personally, if you look at the letter of the law, total government surveillance is illegal in probably every country that's doing it. And the backflips and the mental gymnastics they're going through to justify why it's legal, or it would be comical if the effects weren't so chilling.
So when a government talking head comes out and says it's disingenuous for common people, us commoners, us peasants, to be using encryption, I always say if there wasn't all-pervasive government vacuuming up of all our data, it wouldn't be an issue. But there is, and there's no sign that it's going to stop. So this is a natural reaction from an informed populace, or that portion of the populace that is informed, to take countermeasures.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know much about, there's this .io, I believe. It's sort of like a blockchain-based DNS. Do you know much about that?
Well, .io is a country code top-level domain. It's...
Wouldn't be Indonesia, would it?
It's not Indonesia. Indonesia is...
Trying to think of countries with an I and an O.
But, you know, it's on the tip of my brain. But IO is one of those country-level, top-level domains that sort of passes itself off as a kind of generic domain or a purposeful domain. Like, for example, .tv is Tuvalu. .fm is Micronesia. .co is Colombia. .io is one of these countries.
I'm looking it up right now. Let me see. British Indian Ocean Territory.
Yes, that's it. They are DNS sec signed, so that's a level of DNS signing your DNS records with cryptographic hashes so that you can establish a chain of trust all the way from the root to the final resolver that's getting the answer for you.
Yeah, it's all very interesting stuff. I'm not super techie when it comes to it, so I'm one of those people who I wait till other people start using it for the most part, and then I start using it. So I'm probably an early adopter by most people's standards, but I need to see at least 3 or 4 people I know use it. I'm not going to be the very, very first one because I just don't have time to look into everything.
Well, one thing I will tell you about DNS, whenever some sort of egregious affront to internet freedom comes out and people say, we need a decentralized DNS, we need a P2P DNS. Right. Because DNS, just a quick backgrounder, it's an inverted tree hierarchy, right? There's one node from which all DNS nodes originate. Granted, that node is completely based on consensus and inertia. You could circumvent that node and create an entirely new internet DNS if you could just convince everybody on the planet to switch their root hints file on their computer. So it's fragile, but it's got a lot of inertia behind it. And I always used to say, yeah, P2P DNS is fine, and decentralized DNS is a great concept. Too bad it can't be done. Right? DNS is an inverted tree. There's no way around it. Otherwise, you can't stop name collisions, and it's impossible. And then Bitcoin comes out, and the blockchain ledger model comes out, and then things like Namecoin, which are based on the Bitcoin protocol and the blockchain ledger model, come out, and they go ahead and did it. So, again, somebody else could see a little further over the horizon than I could. It is possible to do P2P DNS now. It is possible to have decentralized DNS if you have your root as a blockchain, a publicly accessible blockchain ledger. So that really changed the game. What's happening outside of the legacy IANA-based DNS tree is a lot more exciting to me than what's going on within it. Within it, you've got new top-level domains, .website, .stuff, .echo, .music. Who cares? It's all based on get your name in this TLD before somebody else does, and it's artificial scarcity, and it really, I'm kind of tired of the entire model. What's going on outside of that, when you have Namecoin, the .bit TLD, even, what Ethereum was proposing a little while ago with, autonomous decentralized corporations and that sort of thing, and naming structures as well. I mean, that's where I'm seeing way more innovation happening. I was saying for the longest time when the new top-level domains were coming out from ICANN, and it was near hysteria, the build-up to this. It was just, if you're a DNS geek, people were just falling all over themselves with enthusiasm, and I was kind of yawning. I'm like, can't somebody come up with a real reason for a new TLD that is not based on get your name before somebody else does. And it's sort of a model of what I've said about, anarchy versus statism. It's when you have this top-down bureaucratic control, the innovation is not there the way it is when you have this bottom-up free market thing. And so you see the bulk of the innovation that I see happening within DNS is coming from outside the established conventional channels.
That's great, and that's exactly what we want, and that's the beauty of the internet, and it's decentralized, and we need to decentralize all the things. So I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to talk about, Mark, while we're on here, or if not, why don't you just mention again where people can find out about EasyDNS, or how you're running for the Libertarian Party of Canada, or anything else you want to mention?
Sure, just come on out to easydns.com sometime. Our blog is at blog.easydns.org. I'm running on the Libertarian ticket here in beautiful Parkdale in downtown Toronto, NDP stronghold. We'll see what kind of dent we can make. And I write about economics and anarcho-capitalism and such at rebootingcapitalism.com.
Yeah, and you also submit some of your articles to the Dollar Vigilante, and some of them get picked up on zerohedge.com, so you're out there quite a bit, so that's great. For anyone watching, just like, subscribe, share to these videos. That's how we can get this information out there. We need to decentralize all the things, and that's what anarchy is all about. And so that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
When you consider that you have to spend all your time basically unteaching what your kids just learned.
So not only must the government recognize natural rights, but the government can't disparage them. Unfortunately, the people in the government have a hole in their copy where the Second Amendment is, the Ninth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment.
So, this is not so saintly. I mean, because he's got the reputation of favoring, ending slavery. But he wasn't an opponent of slavery. The abolitionists were opponent of slavery, but not Abe Lincoln.
I mean, the actual argument and the explanation is pretty darn simple. I mean, it's so simple as to almost be self-evident. I mean, things like self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, it takes about 3 seconds to demonstrate that government can't be legitimate.
Well, I think human beings have the right to shape their own reality. And that's what's been taken away from us. We are participating involuntarily in a system that shapes our reality for us. And the first step is to not allow that.
You're paying off your debt, you have to pay off your car loans, your mortgage, you have to maybe even live with your parents, and then you look back at your life and you did nothing. You never challenged yourself, you never experienced anything, you never lived your life because you kept doing what the machine told you to do.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.